Welcome back to Show and Tell. I'm Billie. I'm coming to you today from my ninth floor apartment in Manhattan. Too tiny an apartment to have stash. This is some of the yarn of a project I'm currently working on, but other than that, there's not a whole lot piling up. I'm usually very reluctant to buy yarn. However, in the past week, I had to, and I wanted to tell you about the not so pleasant saga of that experience. So I am currently working on a vintage sweater. I'll put a picture here in case you haven't been with me before. Shame on you. It's a 1930s vintage sweater that involves some marled yarn and white stripes. I chose to go with a black and white marl. And when I went to the yarn shop, I selected a very creamy shade of white. I didn't want a stark white. I don't know if the color is reading so well, but vintage patterns were written for just one size generally, and they may specify a yarn that's no longer in existence 80 years later. So you don't have a lot to go on in terms of how much yarn you're actually going to need. It's always a crapshoot. This particular time, I decided, since the store's policy was you can only return unwound skeins within 3 months, I wasn't sure that I would be finished in 3 months because historically, many of the sweaters I knit take me longer than that. So I thought, let me just start with the red, which I definitely was going to need only one skein. And let me take a skein of black and white, I told the woman, and I'll see how far it goes, and then I'll be able to better estimate how much I need in toto. She thought that sounded like a good idea and reassured me that because Cascade is very consistent in their dye lots, I mean, they're a well-established large company, especially with black and white, she thought I'd probably be okay, particularly because I'd be modeling it. And I took her advice. I thought that sounded plausible. The last time I saw you, I had knit one of the shoulders. These stitches were on hold and finished the whole rest of the back. When I got to this point, I thought, well, I better start knitting on the sleeve because I want to see how these stripes are going to lay out, how far apart they are, because I wanted to be assured that when I knit the front of the sweater, that the top stripe would be hitting me in a place where you're going to be able to see it on screen. I didn't want the top stripe to be down here where you're apt to not see it. And in fact, the image, the illustration of the sweater has that top stripe very high up. So I thought, let me start a sleeve and see how those stripes are laying out. Then I started to run out of the yarn. So I went back to the yarn shop to buy more white and more black. P.S. They no longer had dye lot 16 in snow, Cascade Heritage. So I picked up 3 skeins of this. I don't know if you can see it well on screen. But I've taken some photographs closer to my light source that really indicate just how vast a difference there is. In fact, when I came home with one of the new balls wound up and I started to knit the other shoulder, I think that you might be able to see, even in this lighting, the difference in the color from this, which has a more creamy yellowish tone, to this, which is almost like pure white. Again, I'll insert a picture here that will amplify that for you. So now I'm in a pickle. What do? I can't have this color stripe. Sorry, this color stripe with this color butting up against it. Again, picture's going to be better than this video. So I thought Ravelry is my friend. I went to Ravelry and I looked for Cascade Heritage in my color snow to see who had it. A bunch of people had it. And of course, the default for stash is not for sale. You have to actually select that you're interested in trading or selling. So I reached out to everybody just in case, like me, they hadn't selected that they're willing to sell. One person has my dial-up. Yay. But I probably need 3 more skeins. So I reached out to everybody. A couple people told me, no, I need it. I'm not willing to sell it, whatever. Then I went to the next level and I went back to each person's Ravelry page for that yarn to see if they listed what store they purchased it at. And I found different people with Lot 16 had purchased it in a variety of places, one in Canada, one in, I think, Iowa and Illinois and Virginia, all over the map, Florida. So I started calling or emailing each of these vendors to see if perchance any of them have this dialogue. And people wrote the date that they purchased the yarn. Most of them are like last March. It's been a while. So I know my shop has already brought in new dialogue. Perhaps these other ones have too. But then again, I thought maybe in a smaller town, they don't have as much turnover as we do in New York City. So, they probably also order less. But anyway, the jury is still out because it's the weekend and a lot of the warehouses weren't open.
So when I started calling around to various vendors like Webb's and Jimmy Bean and a bunch of other places that carry Cascade Heritage, I forget now who it was, but one place said to me, oh, Cascade, their dialogues are usually very consistent from one batch to the next. So especially with white, it shouldn't be a problem, which is exactly what they told me in my local yarn shop. But it turns out not to be the case, unfortunately. You would think white wouldn't be so hard to match, but yeah. The black is of a different dye lot, but it looks pretty close, but the whites are really, really off. And I came back and I re-recorded this section. I have found somebody on Ravelry who has 3 skeins of white for me in my dye lot. So I forget her name, Dina. Thank you so much. People on Ravelry are incredible, incredibly helpful, and I think we're all sort of in this together. It happens to all of us from time to time. So I think people are very sympathetic to your plight if you purchase the wrong amount or your dye lot doesn't match or whatever. Stuff happens for all of us. I will try not to ever let this happen again because it's disappointing. It's a nuisance. It's more costly. I have to go back and forth to my yarn shop and I have to pay shipping now, which I wasn't paying before. And I get a discount at my yarn shop because I'm a member of the guild. So anyway, I don't need to burden you with all of that, but I'm really grateful that not only did she have it in her stash, but that she's willing to part with it. So I just wanted to give her a really good shout out. Thank you.
So keep your fingers crossed for me. I really would like to have the right color snow when I go to jury duty this Thursday. I don't know if that's in the realm of possibility. We'll see. So that is a part of my story for this week. Acquisitions.
So in the acquisitions category, besides the black and white yarn in the wrong dye lots, my other acquisitions since I last saw you are these inserts for my shoes. I talked about the problem I'm having with my Achilles tendon a little bit. It looks like this. And it's rigid, whereas my beautiful Skechers that are so comfortable, by the way, the stock has done incredibly well over the last several years. I think it's up 84% or something. Their shoes are very flexible, which turns out for me isn't good. So I have one of these in my shoe for the foot that's troubling me.
I did promise you a finished object. Let me go grab that 1 second. I hope you'll allow me to call him finished, even though he still has a pin in him and some loose ends. I know it would take me 5 minutes to finish him up, but I probably won't show him again. So here's my little teddy. Not knit for anyone in particular. This was just a dry run to see how a very basic bear would look. I want to knit a teddy bear. Well, last time I told you I thought I might like to knit a teddy bear with the blue and white Norwegian motifs that I used in my ensemble of the mittens and the ski hat and ski sweater. Again, I'll put a picture here to refresh your memory. But I wasn't completely happy with this pattern because the pieces are knit flat, which is silly because the whole thing is so circular. And I thought if I'm doing that motif, it might be easier to just keep going around and around and maybe have less sewing up to do. So I was at the library and I gazed in the 700 section to find their knitting books. Let me go grab the book that I found.
So the book is called Wild and Woolly Knitted Animals by Sara Elizabeth Kellner. She has instructions for a wide variety of different animals, from hedgehog to brown rats to frogs, monkey. I might have to do a monkey for my sock monkey sweater. But the animal that I want to knit is on page 81. Let me find that. This is the one that I'm going for, the squirrel. So he'll have maybe the little pattern on his belly and the bigger pattern. I'm not sure yet. Maybe opposite, the big pattern here and the little pattern all over where he's gray. My motivation for doing a squirrel dates back to early childhood. I lived down the street from a toy store, a corner toy store called Uncle Harry's. It's where my mother bought me the original 1959 Barbie doll, which if I still had it pristine in its box, which it was, it would be worth a small fortune today, but c'est la vie, in one of her many moves, she discarded it. But there was a time that we were going to some kind of a family gathering, and my mother wanted to bring gifts for all of the cousins, all of my first cousins. So for the boys, she bought models that they could build. You know, you glued together all the little pieces And for my cousin Barry, I think it was Barry, not Denny, but in any event, one of the boys got this model of Perry the Squirrel. It was the only one that Uncle Harry had in stock. And I carried on a little bit that I really wanted it because it was so cute. You built the model of the squirrel, and then there was fur inside. I think you coated him with glue, and then you sprinkled the fur on. So it was going to look kind of like a real furry squirrel. And if you've ever been close to one of these eastern squirrels, they're very soft looking. You do want to reach out and touch them, but of course you resist because you know they carry rabies. They are, after all, rodents. All I could tell you is I wanted Perry the squirrel. And my mother said, but Billie, Uncle Harry only has one, and I have to give Cousin Barry something. If he had more than one, I would buy one for you, but there's only one, and you can't have it. I'm so sorry. For the rest of my life, I used to needle my mother about Perry the squirrel. So now I'm going to have my own version of a squirrel. We see them around New York a lot. There's another squirrel in this book, a red squirrel. Oh, here in the front it shows all the animals. Pigeon. Ugh. We have too many of those in New York. You know, Woody Allen calls them rats with wings. Pigeons are kind of grungy. There's also this red squirrel, page 27. Let me give you a close-up of him. Well, here's her drawing. See, the tail's not as plush and lush. And here's her knitted version. But I like the gray eastern squirrel better, so that's the one I'm going to do.
I know you're going to think I totally flipped my lid. When I had to put the black and white project aside, I returned to this, which I've shown you. Sorry, that's upside down. The ribbon should be at the bottom. And I had explained that I'm going to be looking for a color to complement this to do the top of the sweater next weekend when I go to Go Knitting Live. On this, I had already knit for the back, the ribbing and part of it. And for the front, not the ribbing, but another about like 6 inches. Right now, they're all bunched up on stitch holders. I was initially planning for this to be the lower part of the sweater, and then above it, a solid color. But it seems like the solid color best suited for this might be something in this purple family. And I thought, if it's going to be a darker color than this, I wouldn't want that on the top. I would rather have the dark color be at the bottom. So I'm rethinking this now. I may still be able to salvage some of this. I'm keeping all of it for the moment, but I decided to approach this project from another tack, even though the pattern, of course, like all vintage patterns, is knit bottom up. I thought there's no law against me knitting it top down. So I cast on for, this is the back of the neck, a select small number of stitches, and then I'm increasing, which, you know, if you're knitting up, when you get to the top of the shoulder, you start decreasing until you get to the back of the neck. So I'm doing that in reverse. It's a very basic pattern. It's all stockinette, and the only shaping, there's no shaping it like from the ribbing all the way up. You only start shaping at the underarm. So I thought it's pretty easy to reverse all of that. So I thought, since I'm out of things to work on, I mean, unless I go back to my For the Wink or the Links, which, yes, Billie, you should finish that sweater one of these years. And I also still have the black cardigan, the Tyrolean sweater that, whenever I arrive at some place, which is a stumbling block for me, I tend to put things aside. I'm sure you do the same. Anyway, while I'm figuring it all out, I thought, well, let me start from the back neck and work my way down, just in case I find a dark color yarn to work the bottom. So stay tuned for more progress on this. Um, I'm doing something with this I haven't ever done before. I wound one skein into two balls, pretty much 50-50. But if I had them just rolling around in my project bag, the outer yarn was getting tangled up, and these two are connected. So if I get to the end of one and I still have yarn in the other, I can still continue to work off both, which I wouldn't be able to do if I had cut it. Anyway, I decided to hook them together so they stay constantly in tandem as I pull. I hand wound these center pulls. Comment below and let me know if you've ever done that and if you get yarn barf or not. I've been pretty successful in doing it. I'm happy to report. So those are the only things I've been working on since I last saw you, which wasn't all that long ago. The next time I see you, I will be at Vogue Knitting Live. So until then, take care. Stay warm, stay safe. And yeah, I shouldn't have left this to the end. All of my best wishes go out to the people in the Los Angeles area who've been losing much more than their entire home, but all the possessions in the home that are probably so meaningful to them. I can't even wrap my head around what that would feel like because I'm so connected to some family heirlooms and pieces of furniture that are irreplaceable and that have memories attached to them and all sorts of other things. My mother's jewelry box and those poor people, wedding photos, photo albums. I mean, I offered my cousin, just send me anything that you want to. Keep it safe for you. I'm on the 9th floor. Nothing's happening. Hopefully, nothing's happening here. Anyway, I just wanted to add that on that we're all praying for you.